The air in the former Ministry of Antiquities, now temporarily designated Coalition Provincial Authority Headquarters. Sector Alpha smelled overwhelmingly of old dust, scorched plastic, and the faint, unsettling perfume of administrative defeat. Major Alistair Finch, of His Majesty's Royal Logistics Corps, wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead with a sleeve. That had not been white since the Euphrates crossing. He looked less like a victorious liberator and more like an accountant who had just discovered the entire company budget had been spent on novelty keychains, Captain Riley Finch said. His voice a low, exhausted rumble that barely cut through the sound of distant, sporadic gunfire, remind me again why. The Provisional Authority for Rebuilding Iraq must conduct its most crucial security briefings using folding lawn chairs, salvaged from a bombed-out country club. Captain Chuck Riley, U.S. Army, a man whose enthusiasm seemed chemically resistant to the realities of occupational chaos, slapped the motivational sticker onto his plastic water bottle. It is about optics, Major. We are not here to indulge in Ba'athist excess. We are establishing a lean, democratic operational paradigm, plus the brass wants to minimize the potential for looting. Finch stared at the empty space where just 24 hours ago, a magnificent, gold-plated chaise lounge purported to have belonged to Saddam's fourth cousin twice removed had resided. Minimized looting. Captain, do you honestly believe that yesterday I watched a civilian drive past carrying a fully assembled four-poster oak bed, strapped vertically to the roof of a Fiat? Looting is not a possibility. Riley, it is the national pastime. They are stealing the wallpaper. Riley consulted a laminated slide deck titled Phase 4, Securing the Transition. With respect, Major, the Secretary of Defense, assured us that the Iraqi people would greet us as liberators ready to establish civic order. This is just a temporary security vacuum. Finch slowly adjusted his makeshift desk, a slab of marble balanced precariously on two filing cabinets. It is not a vacuum, Captain. It is an industrial-scale extraction of every movable object south of Tikrit. We did not liberate Iraq. We merely opened the world's largest, most destructive garage sale.
How much for this?
And who needs law and order when you have a functioning ice cream truck? I saw one being hauled away this morning, perfectly intact, minus the tires and the engine. The door to the office, which was supposed to be secured by two Royal Marine snipers, burst open. An Iraqi man in a filthy white robe, panting heavily, stumbled into the room, holding a large, ornate wooden frame. "Intruce, wait!" Riley shouted, grabbing his sidearm. "He's got something!" The man, clearly panicked, stammered in broken English. "Not steal, not steal. This is very important evidence." Finch peered. At the frame, it was massive, likely designed to hold a painting of Saddam reviewing a parade of synchronized jets. Now it was empty. Evidence of what exactly? Finch inquired, wearily. Evidence that painting was here, the man shrieked, pointing frantically. I am former curator, must document theft. But they took all the paper and the pens, so I take frame. Frame is evidence. Finch sighed. Right. The frame is now evidence of the missing painting, which was evidence of a cultural heritage we failed to protect. Thank you for your service, curator. Now kindly leave before someone steals your trousers. As the curator darted back out, Finch turned to Riley. See, Captain, even the looters are being looted. This is not a security vacuum. This is a perpetual motion. Machine of theft. Riley, unperturbed, pointed to his slide deck. That is why we need to implement Stabilization Protocol 7B, restoring essential services. Step 1. Establish the Iraqi Governing Council. That will instantly provide the framework. For legitimacy in civilian law enforcement, Finch frowned.
They write these orders
Ah,
from an
yes, the
air-conditioned
council,
bunker while the city
the
has
key
no
to
power.
democracy.
Look at this, Major.
Tell me, Captain,
The demographic
have you finalized the
targets for
demographic
security
ratio
body
for
are
this
exactly
foundational
where we
body?
need them to be.
Just
Clean,
finalized.
efficient,
Riley
ready
beamed,
for implementation.
pulling up a color-coded pie chart.
This sector
Based on the
remains
latest
unstable,
population
high
estimates,
concentration.
we have got 13 Shia
If we move
members,
resources
10
through this
Sunnis,
route, we risk
5 of
engaging
whom
the
are
militias
Kurdish,
instead of
naturally, and 3 Christian minority seats. Perfect proportional representation. Finch slowly closed his eyes.
Look at that
He could already hear the distant sounds of sectarian fires being lit. Captain Finch said slowly, "Forgive me, but in a nation where, for decades, the Sunnis have been the sole beneficiaries of the state security apparatus, controlling literally every aspect of state life, do you suppose they might view a sudden coalition-backed government, dominated by a 2/3 Shia majority, as perhaps a hostile takeover?" Riley scrolled past the pie chart to a slide that featured a majestic animated bald eagle. Nonsense, Major. They will see it as democracy in action. The majority rules. They are liberated. They are liberated, yes, Finch conceded. But they are also terrified. You have just taken the keys to the kingdom from the former rulers, the entire professional, administrative and military backbone of the country, and handed them to the people. Saddam spent 30 years trying to eradicate. They will not join this new democracy, Captain. They will organize against it. You just signed the recruitment papers for the insurgency. Riley looked confused. But it is proportional. It is math. It is deeply flawed sociological algebra, Riley Finch corrected. And every Sunni Ba'athist bureaucrat currently hiding in a sewer, watching his gold-plated toilet being hauled away by a Shia neighbor, is going to agree with me. 2 weeks later, the situation had deteriorated from chaos to structured, malevolent anarchy. The governing council, true to Finch's prediction, was largely useless, bogged down in bitter squabbles over the distribution of the few remaining functional desks and issuing contradictory decrees regarding the price of tea. Riley, however, remained optimistic, arguing that at least the council was talking about democracy. They are talking, yes, Finch muttered, staring at a fax report detailing the overnight theft of an entire water purification plant. They are talking while Basra has turned into a scene from Mad Max, just with slightly more polite British soldiers trying to keep the oil flowing. Riley ignored him adjusting his coalition-issued baseball cap. Good news, Major. We have a major win on the board. Intelligence just confirmed a successful raid operation south of the city. Operation Desert Sledgehammer.
Impact confirmed on Al-Tabor
Desert
Mosque
Sledgehammer
complex.
sounds painful. What did we hit? Al-Tabor Mosque
Hold fire,
complex.
we have potential civilian
Massive
casualties.
intelligence target. We had intel that the imam there was preaching anti-coalition rhetoric and, critically, giving bomb-making lessons. Riley pointed to a grainy photo of a dilapidated compound. This is a huge kinetic victory. We busted the entire cell and seized a major weapons cache. Finch rubbed his temples. A mosque. We raided a mosque. Did anyone say, consider the optics of storming a place of worship in a newly liberated Islamic nation? It was a necessary, targeted action. We got 80mm mortars, RPGs, bomb-making equipment. All of it. Riley leaned in conspiratorially. We just need to make sure the press release focuses on the threat neutralized aspect, not, the location. The very next morning, the coalition headquarters was besieged by angry crowds and international press. Finch and Riley were summoned to the Joint Information Center, where the scene was pure bedlam. A harried press officer thrust a stack of disturbing photographs into Finch's hand. Well, this is not good, Finch observed, holding up a picture of a wrecked prayer hall. The image showed overturned pulpits, smashed furniture, and copies of the Quran scattered across the dusty floor, many trampled or ripped. Riley gasped. Wait, what happened to the briefing? They said it was a professional sweep. Professional sweep? Finch scoffed, tapping the photo. They went in like a plague of particularly angry bison. Look at this, Riley. They did not just find weapons. They ensured every single local Muslim, even those who hated Saddam, now views us as the primary enemy. A reporter from Al Jazeera cornered them immediately. Major Finch, Captain Riley. Witnesses state your forces ransacked the Al Tabor Mosque and desecrated the Quran. Is this part of the liberation strategy? Riley panicked, tried to stick to the script. Absolutely not. This was a routine, operational response. A small skirmish against deeply fanatical, desperate remnants of Saddam's regime.
You have no authority
Desperate
here.
remnants. Or religious fundamentalists radicalized by 12 years of American sanctions and airstrikes, the reporter countered sharply. Finch stepped forward, taking the microphone with an air of theatrical resignation.
Let me be perfectly
Gentlemen,
clear.
ladies, let me be perfectly clear. Our forces encountered armed resistance at this facility. When dealing with insurgents hiding amongst civilian infrastructure, unpleasant measures sometimes must be taken. We did seize a substantial cache of weapons. And why were the seized items not displayed? The reporter pressed, "Why only a printed list?" Finch paused, a rare flicker of genuine outrage crossing his face. Because, gentlemen, if we had stopped to meticulously photograph every seized item while under fire, we might have incurred casualties. It was a routine operation against an illegal munitions site. We regret any incidental damage, but the security of the coalition forces and the Iraqi people remains paramount. He then leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that only the microphones could catch. We were told the Iraqi people would welcome us as liberators. Instead, every action we take, however necessary, is viewed through a lens of suspicion forged over a decade of distrust. When we kill the bomb makers, we are desecrating a holy site. When we allow free movement, the streets turn into a looting parade. And when we try to create a balanced government, we ignite a sectarian war. Honestly, I am starting to think we are simply genetically incompatible with sensible governance here. The press conference dissolved into shouts. Riley pulled Finch aside, his face pale. "Major, they are calling for protests across the Shia South." That imam was apparently a deeply respected, albeit radical figure.
Create a Martin.
Well, we just made him a martyr, did we not? Finch said dryly. Congratulations, Captain. We have managed to unify the Sunnis and the Shias against us. That took true diplomatic incompetence. They retreated to their HQ, which was now mostly empty, save for the marble slab and the lawn chairs a small team of contractors was already attempting and failing to reinforce the perimeter with concertina wire. "We need to stabilize this," Riley insisted, frantically paging through a binder. "The conventional fight is over, but the insurgency is starting, before the dust has settled. We need security, Major Real. Security. And how do you propose we achieve real security when we have zero on-the-ground intelligence? And every Iraqi police officer is either dead hiding or participating in the theft of traffic signals." Finch countered. Riley pointed to a new entry in his binder. The CIA. They have been quietly operating in the background, rounding up the leadership. They have been interrogating high-value Ba'athist security officials for weeks. They must have a stabilization plan. They are the intelligence experts. Finch shuddered. The CIA had a reputation that preceded them. A reputation that involved highly effective operations often followed by spectacular generation-long disasters. Let us pray the CIA's stabilization plan involves something more nuanced than carpet bombing all remaining religious sites, Finch muttered. The meeting took place in the bunker beneath. The former Ministry of Defense, a cold, oppressive space where the scent of stale cigarette smoke mingled with the damp concrete. Their CIA contact was a man known only as Mr. Thorne, a pale, utterly unremarkable individual who seemed to view the entire occupation as a minor inconvenience distracting him from a crossword puzzle. Thorne sat across from them, tapping a long, thin folder on the table. Major Captain Thorne began, his voice flat. We appreciate your efforts managing the surface tensions, the looting, the sectarian friction, all predictable externalities of regime change. Riley leaned forward, eagerly. We are very interested in your findings, Mr. Thorne, specifically regarding the former security apparatus. We need vetted, loyal Iraqis to start policing the streets. What are the chances of restarting the municipal police forces with former regime elements? Thorne offered a smile that did not reach his eyes. The chances are excellent, Captain. We have interviewed, let us see, several hundred former Ba'athist intelligence agents, commanders of the Special Republican Guard, high-ranking officers of the Mukhabarat, General Intelligence Directorate, and the Jihaz al-Amn al-Khas Special Security Organization. Finch whistled softly. That is quite the rogues gallery. Have you compiled the evidence for the War Crimes Tribunals? Thorne tilted his head slightly. War Crimes Tribunals, Major? We are not lawyers. We are intelligence analysts. We compile data for maximum efficiency. And what we found was fascinating. Riley looked confused. Fascinating how? Did they confess to the WMDs? The ties to Al-Qaeda. Ah, those little details. Thorne waved, a dismissive hand. The WMDs and Al-Qaeda connections were, shall we say, strategic narratives designed to justify the kinetic phase. What we are discussing now is the practical reality of maintaining internal security. Thorne paused dramatically, pulling a summary sheet from the folder. For 30 years, Saddam Hussein kept a lid on Iraq. Not a pleasant lid, certainly. But this nation, despite being an ideological powder keg, a cocktail of Sunni dominance, oppressed Shia-majority tribal violence, and Kurdish separatism, was functionally stable. Why Finch knew the answer, but waited for the CIA operative's terrifying explanation. The state security apparatus. Thorne concluded, pointing to the paper. Saddam had the most efficient, pervasive, and brutally effective internal surveillance and enforcement system in the Middle East. Why? Because the loyalty was absolute, and the consequences for even thinking about dissent were swift, fatal, and often involved relatives. The fear was a preventative measure, and crucially under this system, global terrorist groups, like the ones we came here to fight, could not gain a foothold. Riley frowned. Wait, you were saying that the very paranoia that led Saddam to forbid his own generals from talking to each other, the brutality, the torture chambers, that was actually effective. Effective at its specific goal, yes. Thorne confirmed terrorism was minimal. Insurgency was non-existent. Internal threats were neutralized. Now you gentlemen have introduced freedom and democracy. Thorne leaned back, resting his hands on the table. And what is the result? Of that freedom, widespread looting, sectarian cleansing, and the immediate emergence of radical clerics and militia groups, filling the power vacuum. We are creating the very insurgency we sought to prevent. We have replaced efficient terror with inefficient chaos. Finch looked sick. So what is the conclusion? We are stabilizing the region by introducing widespread disorder. That sounds like a brilliant piece of irony. The conclusion is simple. Major Thorne stated, his eyes cold and unwavering. We need to restore functional security immediately. And the only people in this country with the training, the infrastructure, and the cultural authority to impose that level of control are the people who were doing it 6 weeks ago. Riley stammered, horrified. You mean you want to hire them back? The mukhabarat,
You mean you want to hire
the
'em
torturers, the ones who were actively hunting down the families of dissidents. We are not hiring the old goals of the regime, Captain Thorne corrected patiently.
We are hiring the method.
We are hiring the methods. Their methods work. Their loyalty tested under duress is predictable. We are offering them their old jobs, security analysts, counterinsurgency specialists, rapid response teams, provided they now direct their formidable efforts against the new enemies, radical Islamists, foreign fighters, and organized crime. It is a change of target, not technique. Finch found himself speechless, which was a rare and deeply unsettling experience. This was the ultimate expression of the Bush Doctrine. Preemptive action leading to unintended consequences, now being fixed by complete moral capitulation. So to prevent chaos, Finch finally managed.
His voice strained. We are intentionally restoring the functional aspects of the dictatorship.
We just spent 3 weeks and billions of dollars overthrowing. Precisely, Thorne nodded. Call it the Saddam paradox. It ensures stability. And the alternative is a full-scale civil war that will suck up American resources for a decade. Thorne pushed the folder towards Riley. We need coalition authority authorization to immediately re-engage these assets. They are already waiting in holding facilities. They need their uniforms, their vehicles, and their operational authority back. We will call them the Provisional Iraqi Security Directorate. They report only to the coalition, of course. Riley stared at the document, his hands shaking slightly. His entire life had been dedicated to the idea of spreading democracy and freedom. Now he was being asked to sign a document resurrecting a police state. But the Iraqi people, Riley whispered,
If we use them,
they will know.
we become them.
They will recognize the men who tortured them
Stability
back
isn't
in
worth the
power.
blood on our hands.
Of course they will, Thorne said simply.
Understand
And the
this.
violence will stop.
The rule of law has
People do
failed.
not fight
From
what they
this
fear
point forward,
absolutely.
order will be
Stability
maintained
is the
through
priority.
absolute fear.
Captain Thorne stood up. I need that authorization signed by 1800 hours. The sooner we get these assets online, the sooner we can stop talking about stolen furniture and start talking about captured terrorists. Riley stood by the shattered window of the ministry, staring out at the capital city. Baghdad looked like a dying organism, still breathing, but covered in sores of burning debris and anarchy. He clutched the document. In his hand, Finch entered, carrying 2 lukewarm cans of Coke he had retrieved from a dangerously overcrowded supply depot. He handed one to Riley. You have not signed it, Finch noted, taking a long swig of the sickly sweet beverage. I cannot, Major Riley said quietly. This document reverses everything. It makes the entire invasion a cruel joke. We just killed thousands of soldiers, displaced millions, and created a humanitarian crisis, only to conclude that the best form of governance is the one we blew up. Look at the bright side, Captain. Finch offered his tone exceptionally dry. We now have incontrovertible proof that the war on terror is fundamentally self-defeating. A remarkable finding, really. Riley spun around, his face etched with moral despair. How can you be so flippant, Major? We preached liberation. We promised a new Iraq. And now we are going to empower the very villains we claimed to be destroying. The Sunnis, who were just alienated by our sectarian governing council, will now see the faces of their oppressors, returning, this time, backed by American tanks. Finch walked over and placed a hand on Riley's shoulder. Captain, I sympathize. But policy made in Washington often melts like ice cream. In Baghdad, the political goal was regime change. The practical reality is that we created a power vacuum Thorne is merely applying. The ruthless logic of the machine. The CIA is not interested in democracy. They are interested in manageable risks, and a stable tyranny is always less risky than a violent democracy, especially when the latter involves a protracted counterinsurgency. But the insurgency will start. Because of this, Riley protested, gesturing with the file. They will see this as proof that the U.S. is just another empire, changing the flag, but keeping the boot on the throat. I suspect you are entirely correct. Finch agreed immediately. But if the CIA's calculation is correct, the restored security state will be effective at suppressing the immediate large-scale threats, at least for a short time, thereby giving Washington the illusion of stability necessary to declare victory and pull troops out prematurely. He paused. Think of it as the ultimate bureaucratic solution, Captain Wee. Trade future perpetual chaos for immediate, actionable stability. It is an administrative masterpiece. Riley looked down at the documents, then back at the city, where gunfire was definitely getting closer. He thought of the young Marines who had died in Nasiriyah, the British commandos fighting over the Al-Faw Peninsula, the families displaced by the bombs, all for this moment, for this signature. So we are condemning this country to eternal civil strife. Major, we are guaranteeing job security for every arms dealer in the region for the next decade, Riley Finch corrected, and ensuring that, no matter who rules, fear will be the supreme currency. It is not democracy, but it is certainly order. Saddam wanted attrition warfare. We just gave him the perfect conditions for it. We are the paper tiger that, in its attempt to roar, ate its own tail. Riley swallowed hard, picked up a pen, and scrawled his signature across the bottom of the authorization document. Captain Chuck Riley, Coalition Provincial Authority. As he signed it, a profound sense of foreboding settled over the room. It was done. The coalition had just unwittingly given birth to the long, bloody counterinsurgency. By 1900 hours, the transformation was already visible. Convoys of unmarked black SUVs, newly requisitioned from a shipment intended for the State Department, roared through the streets of Baghdad. They were filled with familiar, hard faces. Former generals, former interrogators, and former heads of the Mukhabarat, men who had survived decades of Saddam's purges by being utterly ruthless and totally loyal. They were not wearing uniforms yet, but they moved with a chilling, predatory authority that had been absent from the streets since the conventional war ended. Finch and Riley watched the convoys from their headquarters window. They seem energized, Riley noted, clutching his empty Coke can. They are doing what they do best, Captain Finch replied, restoring order by instilling absolute terror. The looting will stop immediately. The price for that stability, of course, is the total eradication of public trust. But at least the traffic lights will be safe. A knock came at the door, and Mr. Thorne reappeared, looking marginally happier. Authorization received. Deployment is proceeding ahead of schedule. We have already made several key arrests based on initial intelligence briefings. Stability is returning. Thorne then pulled out a sheet of paper. Also, on a related note, Major Finch, the Provisional Iraqi Security Directorate, has already requisitioned several high-priority items that were reported stolen from their former facilities. They request that the coalition prioritize their retrieval. Finch raised an eyebrow. Oh, what high priority? Strategically vital equipment did Saddam's secret police need? Back so desperately, Thorne consulted the list. 30 specialized vehicles, 400 assault rifles, and let us see 3 dozen. High-grade industrial freezers. Riley squinted. Freezers? What on earth for? Storing food? We are still having trouble getting power grid running. Thorne's smile broadened slightly. That same unsettling, vacant expression. Not for food, Captain. The Provisional Directorate informs us that specialized, high-grade industrial freezers are essential for the long-term storage of forensically sensitive material. Apparently, the desert heat is very damaging to that sort of thing. Finch felt a genuine chill that had nothing to do with the Baghdad climate. They had not just rehired the police. They had rebuilt the torture chambers. In other words, Finch summarized, his voice flat, we just paid for the equipment necessary for the resurrection of institutionalized state brutality. We paid for stability, Major Thorne corrected, tipping his head. A quick stabilization will make the occupation look like a success. Washington will be thrilled. Now, if you will excuse me, I need to coordinate with the newly re-engaged Counterintelligence Directorate. They found where the local militia leader is hiding. Thorne departed, leaving Finch and Riley alone in the marble hall, surrounded by their lawn chairs. Riley slumped into his seat. I think I preferred the looting. At least the looters were just stealing furniture. Finch looked out at the lights of Baghdad, now piercing. The darkness no longer a city of chaos, but a city of calculated fear. They are still stealing things, Captain Finch said, watching the black SUVs glide through the streets.
It's too heavy, help!
But now they are stealing hope, and more importantly, they are ensuring that the entire generation we just liberated will grow up hating us far more than they ever hated Saddam. Congratulations, Captain. The conventional phase is over. The real war has just begun. He finished his lukewarm Coke, crumpling the can in his hand. Outside, the sirens of the newly resurrected security forces began to howl, a chilling, familiar sound of the old regime.